Hello and welcome to all students. In this lecture, we study about some standard functions from economics. These functions are supply and demand functions. Supply and demand is one of the fundamental concepts of economics, and it is the backbone of the market economy. So let us define first demand function. So let us define first function is a demand function. It refers to how much quantity of a product or service is desired by the buyers. The quantity demanded is amount of product that people are willing to buy at a certain price. It is called as demand. It is well known fact that the demand depends on the price. We know that the demand of a product depends on price. If price increases, demand decreases, and if price decreases, demand increases. Hence, there is a relationship between the price and the quantity demanded, and this relationship we represent by using the graph. Okay, so let us try to draw a graph, the graph of demand versus price. Okay, so consider a function or consider a graph now. Okay, so this is the price axis and this is demand axis. Okay, this is origin, and the graph of the demand function D, which depends on price. Okay, so this graph is given by like this. Okay, or we can draw more sharply like this. Okay, so this is the graph of demand function D is equal to F of P. Okay, so as price increases, the demand value decreases. Okay, for highest price we have lower demand of the product. Observe that it is the demand which depends on the price. Therefore, the demand is a dependent variable and the price is independent variable in a demand function. Thus, we write demand function as D is equal to F of P, where D is a demand and P is a price. Also, the law of demand states that if all other forces remain equal, then higher the price of a goods, favor people will demand for it. Since the demand decreases when the price increases, the demand curve is a decreasing curve. As we see here, the demand curve is a decreasing curve as shown in this graph. Let us now define the next function. That function is called as supply function. That function is called as supply function. Okay. Supply function, it refers to how much quantity of a product the market can offer. Okay, so we write here it refers to how much quantity of product, how much so it refers to how much quantity of a product the market can offer. The market can offer. The market can offer. The quantity supplied is the amount of certain goods produced. Producers are willing to supply while receiving a certain price. Everyone has experienced that if the price of a certain good goes down, these goods disappears from the market because the suppliers do not wish to sell the goods at a lower rate. But once the price of a goods increases, the market will be flooded with the same goods. Hence, we have the following notes. First note is there is a relationship between supply and price. Supply and price. There is a relationship between these two functions. There is a relationship between supply and prices. Therefore, the relevant supply function can be defined. The supply depends on price. Second, supply depends on price. Therefore, supply is a dependent variable and price is independent variable, and the supply function can be expressed as supply function is equal to g of p. So g is a notation for function. So supply function is g of p, means supply depends on price, where s is supply and p is a price and g is a corresponding function relating these two variables. In this case also we have the following law of supply given by: if all other forces remain equal, then higher the price of goods, more of it is supplied in the market. Thus, the supply curve S equal to G of F is increasing curve as shown in the figure. So let us draw the graph of the supply function as it depends on the price. Okay, so let's try to draw the supply function graph against price. So suppose price is price axis and this is supply axis, and the graph is like this. Okay, so as price increases, supply also increases. Okay, so there's the supply function, supply curve, origin. Okay, so this is S is equal to G of P. Okay, S is equal to G of P graph, okay, shown in the figure. We have therefore learnt the following now. First thing that we have learnt here is we have the following points that we have learned. There are mainly three interrelated variables: price, demand and supply in the market. Second, that we observe that as price increases, demand decreases. See, as price increases, this implies demand decreases, but supply increases. But supply increases. Therefore, the graph of curve D is equal to f of p and s is equal to f of g of p. The graphs of these two functions are as follows. Since the demand and supply are in terms of relevant quantities Q, the above graph are drawn with respect to the price and quantity. Okay. However, when demand D and supply S are replaced by Q, one must be told which of the equations represents the demand curve and which one represent the supply curve. Now let us go to the second point. Expressing the demand and supply function in economics. Expressing the supply and demand functions in economics. Expressing the demand and supply functions in economics. We recall that P is an independent variable. P means price function, which is independent variable, whereas the demand as well as the supply functions are dependent variable. Hence, mathematically we write demand and supply function, supply as a suitable function of price. That is, we write demand as a function of price, and we write again supply as a some function of price. Okay, this can also be expressed as demand means quantity demanded, it is quantity depends on price, and also quantity supplied, it is function of price. So instead of D and S we write quantity variable Q, where Q denotes the quantity of a goods demanded or supplied. However, since the price is a reflection of demand as well as supply in economics, demand and supply functions are expressed in terms of P. That is, they are written as P equal to F of Q and price P is equal to G of Q. So price function we can express in terms of quantity. Okay, price function we can express in terms of quantity. If we use X to denote the quantity Q, then the demand and supply functions can be written as, see here, instead of Q, if I use X, then what will happen? Then our price function g of x, then our price function f of x and price function I can write g of x, okay, respectively, where x is the quantities demanded or supplied as the case may be. Let us now discuss the most critical aspect of the demand and supply function, and that aspect is a break-even point, equilibrium point, break-even point or equilibrium point. So let us write the next point is a break even point, or it is also known as equilibrium point. Okay, consider two functions now. First is the demand function, d is equal to f of p, and s is equal to supply function g of p, and their graphs are as follows. We draw the graphs of these two functions. So as we know the graphs of both the functions, hurry up and shortly draw the graph of this demand function. So we know the graph of demand function is like this. So d is equal to f of p, and this is demand function and the supply function, and the graph of supply function is also known to you, and we draw shortly this graph here. And the graph of supply function, so it is increasing graph. You may draw graph like this, okay. So this is the graph of s is equal to g of p, this is supply function, okay. And if we draw both the graphs together, so if we draw both the graphs together, then we see what happens. First is a graph of demand function, and second is a graph of supply function. So this is demand function, this is supply function, and we get the point of intersection here, okay. And that point is called as equilibrium point or break even point, okay. So this point is called as, I will show by arrow, break even point, okay. And if we drop the perpendicular from this point on the price axis p, this is quantity axis, and we get the point here, we call it is PE, and that point number PE is called as equilibrium price, equilibrium price, okay. So the point of intersection of the demand and supply curve represents that the specific price PE, the specific price PE at which the demand and supply are equal, okay. And this point is called as a break-even point or equilibrium point. The corresponding price at which this point occurs is called as equilibrium price and is denoted by PE. At this point, the amount of goods supplied is equal to amount of goods demanded, which means that the suppliers are selling all goods that they have produced, and the consumers are buying all the goods they have demanded. The allocation of goods at this junction is at its most efficient, and the economy is said to be at equilibrium. Everyone, individual as well as companies, and therefore the country is satisfied with the economic condition. However, this is an hypothetical situation. Such a equilibrium is not possible in real life, but one can try to reach the position never nearer to the equilibrium, which would lead to overall progress of everybody. So this is the end of our lecture, and we stop here. Thank you.